Welcome back to Mac Football Forever. I'm Kaleb Carter. That, with a nice, fresh haircut, is Alex Alvarado. And even better, the mascot of all of our Mac fan love and devotion, coked up Buster Bronco. Say hi, Buster. Nice.
I have been listening to a lot of Young Jeezy lately.
Oh, I feel it. I don't feel it.
So does Buster.
Buster knows how to party. And terrible segue coming. If you watched Western Michigan football this year, every week was a party because Western Michigan was in probably like 3 of the 4 best games in the MAC this year. And they sure as hell made things a lot of fun watching them offensively. For whatever struggles they had against teams they probably shouldn't have, just watching them was enough fun to give us a reason to talk about them every week. So we'll run through a few things about what happened this year with Western Michigan football, the state of the program, where they're at, who's back, who's not. Alex, another year where Western Michigan's heading into that last game and essentially in a, you win, you're in to the MAC championship game. What's kind of the big takeaway from another kind of year that feels like a down the toilet kind of deal?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun and exciting. Like, it really was. Whether it lived up to expectations or not, that's for a conversation we'll have in like a few minutes. But the fact that, I kind of thought that like Leicester's offenses just didn't pull the trigger enough over the last 3 years when John Wasink was the starting quarterback. Sure, he had some injuries and other limitations along the way. And Eleby is just a better athlete at this point too. Mm-hmm. But it's looking like an offense that's fitting a version of the offense that Leicester wants to run more than the style of players that Fleck wanted to bring on and all that stuff. So it kind of looks like this might be closer to Leicester's vision, and he's having a lot more fun with the roster now. So I don't know how much to buy into it moving forward, but I do know that it was fun as hell in 2020. And like you said, it gave us the best games, not just in 2020, but years before. The 7 overtime game with Buffalo. The 2016 run. Western's filled with fun games, and then it's just filled with why isn't it like always winning titles?
First things first, you watched Western Michigan football this year. You saw a hyper efficient offense. While they had some games in the second half of the 6-game season where it wasn't all that impressive. They were held in check to an extent against NIU and against Ball State. Fact that they opened up against Akron, they put a thumping on them like they're supposed to, and then 2 back-to-back really entertaining games, a victory against Toledo and Central. Both those games we just saw so much just fireworks watching Western just kind of open its bag of tricks. We got to see, Dwayne Eskridge is full on focused at wide receiver again. Like we knew that we kind of knew that coming into the season, like that was kind of be where he was at. We didn't know. I don't think a lot of folks knew just how good he could be, even knowing how much potential he had. So we saw that early on. We saw Eleby go and basically put up a 190 higher than a 190 efficiency rating. It was the best in the MAC, even at the tops of the MAC, better than anyone else. I would have thought that even Dustin Crum would have been up there, but nope, it's Eleby. And a lot of that's just huge chunks of yards every time they committed to the pass. They had a balanced offense. They just kind of came up short in the end against Ball State. And even the Eastern game, which is a huge flop, they still scored 42 points. We don't need to get to the defense yet, but the offense obviously has a lot of guys that were able to make big plays. So, Alex, as far as the offense goes, I know they lose somebody like Eskridge, but what's kind of your thought on what Western could be capable of next year with a lot of those same guys back?
Yeah, and there's a lot of just really good, skilled talent out there, wide receiver, and that's kind of why I say that. I don't know if I just said it on this recording. I know you and I were just talking about it off air, but Western and Toledo are essentially the same because I always have super talented, normally 6'3", 6'2" receivers that have good builds to them, and that's what gets them the chunk plays. And Western's also figured out a way to run the ball confidently. They have a steady rotation of backs. This year they had some newcomers with transfers coming in, so we didn't know what to expect too much there, but still, that group there was still, useful and productive, but they weren't world beaters. Eleby, like you said, he's young. He's a sophomore. He was at the same level, walking in to his starting job that John Wasink was at, just a few years ago. And Eleby is just really, really good. Wasink had good receivers to throw to too. It's not like this is the first time that Western's had good receivers. Like, they had a 5th overall draft pick just a few years ago at that position. And they had, in the year before that, they had a 7th round pick or 6th round pick. I don't know what Braverman was. Yeah, I mean, overall, that's just kind of where I'm at. I kind of just like where it's at. But yeah, we'll get to the defense later, I guess.
Yeah, I think so in the lineup, I'll flip it a little bit for Anya just because I want to get to defense later. So let's talk about some of the guys that they had on this offense and then guys they bring or they lose. We obviously mentioned a few. Ladarius Jefferson and Sean Tyler should be back. In the backfield, obviously Jefferson
and Jackson Kincaid, right?
And I was going to get to him too. He might carry the ball 5 times a game next year. You don't really know at this point, but Jefferson and Tyler were kind of a good mix. Kincaid was a nice little change of pace there from time to time, and then obviously there were spots on the offense that they just. Sky Moore didn't even realize a lot of the success he had his freshman year, and part of that was just because of the weapons that Eskridge and Hall presented. So. We might see Moore go back to being a really big time top of the MAC type receiver in terms of like a primary receiver. I think he's more of a primary pass catcher than even than Jaylen Hall is. But Hall's a big play guy, a guy who can really be important in the red zone and crucial situations, big play moments.
They all have guys. They all have like a bunch of different receivers that could be number ones at any given moment. It doesn't have to be for a day or a game. It could just be for like a drive or a play. Like they're the number one. But they're just totally loaded at receiver. They lose Dwayne Eskridge, who he might surprise us. And actually, I don't want to forecast too much. He might surprise us being a 1st round pick. He was so impressive to scouts that, were able to watch him down in Alabama for the Senior Bowl. But you lose someone like that who, no matter what, is going to get paid in the NFL. You're still left with really good talent. Deshaun Bussel's really good. You keep saying Jaylen Hall. Corey Crooms is good. They're still loaded. They're still loaded.
Yep. Offensive line wise, they're bringing guys back, so that's going to be consistent. Like Mike Caliendo's coming back. They do lose Jalen Moore, who's a pro caliber lineman, and props to Western. They've turned out some really good, or some guys that have made their way to the pros in recent years. And I have no reason not to believe that they aren't going to keep doing that. They did have a coaching change along the offensive line, but an offensive coordinator this offseason. So there will be a change there.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see. Like, losing, oh my goodness. Is it John Moreland? Is that his name? I'm not looking right now.
Jake Moreland.
Okay. Yeah, so losing Jake Moreland, that sucks. Like how many? He was there for. God, I don't know off the top of my head. He still helped take Western to more impressive heights, and Western's always known that it can't totally rely on its defense all the time. So his job was he has to score points. He did a good job, and that's going to be interesting to see like how they replace that. I don't think that they're going to totally like change their styles. So there's no reason to think that whoever replaces him is going to be like, oh, he might probably like change everything to like the freaking pistol with 2 tight ends out there. Like, no, that's not going to be the case. No. They're going to, no matter what, like they're going to utilize those athletes.
Yeah. They're going to put athletes in space. They're not going to load the box with tight ends. Like they haven't recruited. That's not to say they've had bad recruits. They haven't recruited to that type of play. Like
that's not what that roster came to play. That's not the football that roster came to play. So
all those guys are back. They've got, at this point, they recruit well enough that you expect a couple, maybe another guy or two to make a splash next year. Couldn't tell you off the top of my head who those guys are going to be, but right. I still would expect somebody's going to do it. Maybe it's like Bustle, like you said. They do. They still lose big guys. Obviously, Eskridge is one. Defensively, Trayshawn Howard goes to Arizona. I have to think he sees Power 5, sees a chance to play against better competition and maybe, be a potential draft pick here in about a year's time or so. Other than that, like they've got guys that, unless I'm mistaken and I'm misunderstanding, AJ Thomas, Ralph Hawley, and Ali Fayyad all back because I haven't heard any whispers about them measuring their pro stock if they could sign at a camp or whatever or anything along those lines. So I would have thought that would be like a declared decision. So all those guys must be back. I just haven't seen anything concrete that says they are for sure back.
Right.
I'll probably find it like tomorrow. It's like, oh yeah, all these guys are coming back. Either way, Western's defense should be better next year, if only because of how bad they were at times this year. They've got a lot of very talented guys back who should be healthier. And I would think a different defensive philosophy in some respect, another offseason to figure out what your failings were on the defensive side of the football. Looking back at the Eastern Michigan game film, Darius Boone should not be tearing you up for even a quarter of football. So, I mean, it's not that Darius Boone isn't a good football player. He's a really good football player. It's that Eastern did not show you anything that gave you the reason to believe they should be running for 150 yards in a game.
Yeah, they need to figure out a way to like either get better in coverage or, have better pass rush. Like it's one of those two has to be the reasons your defense steps up in 2021.
Fayyad being hurt definitely was a factor.
Yeah, but like even in games where like he was hurt and sitting out, like it wasn't like I'm trying to think which one it was. I think it was the Ball State game. It was the Ball State game, and like still like the rest of the defensive linemen still stepped up and played really well without Fayyad.
I don't even know at this point. Like
I mean, I don't have obviously it helps to have him in. Don't get me wrong, but still, I mean, it is
yeah. I don't know. I still think Fayyad's got to be back next year. Ralph Holly's got to be back on the defensive line next year. Thomas was huge for them, and AJ Thomas was big for them in a lot of ways this year. Losing Hayward as a multi-year starter, an all-MAC guy multiple times, obviously hurts, but I mean, they've recruited decent enough guys defensively. I'm interested in seeing them just like I was Kent State. Like, you've got guys, figure it out. But Western has more talented guys. So I will say that. If anybody's going to make a step forward, it should be Western defensively because of the talent they have, which I think is a little bit more respectable on the defensive side than like what Kent State had. Now we
also,
need to
and I do need to point out, I do need to check myself a little bit. I do say that they need to get better in pass rush to like, get better on defense as a whole. As true as that is, they were still second in the MAC this past season with 51 total tackles for loss. And that's just over through 6 games. And that's just 5 fewer than Ball State had in 2 more games. So, I mean, I will give credit where it's due. And if Fayyad and Holly are, just those two alone, if those two alone come back, like they're going to be so good at defensive line. You know, so.
And it is good to check yourself.
I'm going to be fair, even as rival.
Yeah, I mean, the Hall of, without getting into I basically the entire like last 3 weeks of the football season was like, man, I was so wrong about Ball State. Man, I was so wrong about Ball State, and I'm looking at this now, saying Western Michigan all offseason. I said they're going to make the MAC championship game. They're going to make it. They're going to make it. Well, that takes us right to our next point. What happened? Let down again. We've seen it before. When I was the NIU beat reporter, I saw Western fall apart on a really miserable ho-hum night in November back in 2019. Tim Lester's crew just had to grab a win against a really struggling down the home stretch team in NIU. Couldn't do it. And here they are a year later. You beat a Ball State team that hasn't gotten to this point in years and say you're more talented. You should make it happen, right? Nope. Did not work. And for all the late game heroics that Western had from time to time, Ball State sure looked like the team that, had the coaching edge that night and had the players that were prepared for the moment. And I would still argue that Western is a more talented team. There's more upside for what type of team Western could be than like what Ball State was. But last year, Ball State was the better team, period. And now we're looking at Western again. Can Western flip some type of switch defensively that makes them a MAC champion in 2021? Are we looking at that potential next year?
As good as the offense was last year for Western Michigan, and for as good as all the talents were, I feel like if that's a team where if they just focus on, blowing the doors off, if they can just like, be comfortable with trying to win like 51-31, those kinds of games, I think that's the sweet spot for this Western team, at least in, 2021. I don't want to expect a team at all that's going up against RPO style offenses, increasingly more and more across college football and in the MAC, like if I look at someone's defense and like, oh, you're only good if you're averaging, 21 points or 28 points against, it's not realistic anymore, So if Western can figure out, I don't think Western has to have a great defense for it to be the MAC championship winning team that people want it to be. Like, it's not going to be a perfect product ever.
Yeah.
As long as it's just like the best scoring offense.
We're looking at a team that in its first 4 games of the season, 58, 41, 52, 30 points. And 30 against or when they're playing at home against NIU was when you could argue it started to fall off a little bit, that they didn't have they just were flawed in some ways offensively. I don't know that I would put my finger on it because I didn't watch a lot of that game, but maybe there were flaws that you can't outscore NIU. You can't outscore Eastern. You can't outscore Ball State. You're more talented offensively. You have more skilled players and arguably, I would just say, definitely a better quarterback. Mm-hmm. And you didn't outscore those teams. That is a big indictment on your defense. But offensively, I could not point you to a good reason why they did not move the ball better against NIU. And they did win that game, but in the aftermath of that NIU game, they could not get enough done on offense to win either the EMU or the Ball State game. And I don't think it's saying that their offense was bad after that fact. It's just, as talented as they were, I think they should have scored 50 in almost every game.
But it's a weird thing, like under these lesser teams, especially 2017 they lost to Akron, 2018 they lost at Ball State, 2019 let's see they lost at Eastern, that's right. Yeah. And they lost to Eastern again this year. They lose to teams that they shouldn't. I just don't get it.
Yeah, and I think that's going to that'll carry us into our last point, and we'll wrap it up here. And that's namely that it's another year where, because Western doesn't come through when they their fans want them to, it's another we want to fire Lester year or whatever. And I can at least understand the frustrations given where the program was, that Lester was given the keys to the car when the program was in a very good place. Sure, they lost some talent at that point, but they were in a very good place to sustain that success. In Lester's 4 seasons, they are 4-2 last year, so that's 4-2 in the MAC, 7-6 in 2019, 5-3 in the conference, 7-6 in 2018, 5-3 in the conference, and then 2017 is first year, 6-6, 4-2 in the conference. So every season, a winning year, or 4-4 in the conference, rather, I should say, for 2017. But
right.
So 500 the first year after Fleck leaves, they get better.
Yeah, but barely.
Not by a lot.
Yeah, not by a lot. They're barely having winning seasons.
Not finishing things down the stretch of the season really leaves I don't even know if a black mark's fair, but just it leaves you with a bitter taste. And it seems like Western Michigan ends every season with a bitter taste in their mouth. And that's what it's like being a Western fan right now. And that's as good as things can be, and as good as some players are there. It feels like it's kind of a bitter taste every year.
Yeah, and it's just hard to totally pin down what's the fix? What's the fix here? I mean, I think Lester's still a good coach. I'm not
agreed.
I can't rationally think that he's in the hot seat or anything like that. I feel like the coaching changes that he's made along the way have been good. Each adjustment has been good. So if this OC job gets figured out really well, yeah, I'm just excited to see where Western can take it. But I can also understand that they might only take it just not far enough. Yeah, I'm totally realize that might be I don't know. That might be a perma ceiling for Lester. Who knows? I don't. It's just hard to tell.
I'm not going to put it past I'm just not going to put it past Central or Western to be able to be eclipsed by Central and be eclipsed by Toledo again and have that happen. I think that could be where we're headed again. But maybe something happens differently defensively that I don't see it coming. That's the only thing I can really only think of. So
yeah, I just hope that Kaleb Eleby just balls out in 2021, man. A full season of him, I really want to see what that looks like.
60 touchdowns, man. Knowing how college football's trending these days and the type of offense he could potentially be on, he could be one of those guys. Like, I mean, Kyle Trask, Joe Burrow, Mac Jones in recent years have had some of the best passer ratings in college football history. I would not put it past Kaleb Eleby to be able to do that. And
did you realize that
next season?
Did you realize that over his career he's already had 22 touchdowns and 5 interceptions? Like, that's already where he's at in 11 games.
It makes sense. Like,
yeah, because he played really well his freshman year at the tail end of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He led them to a win against NIU and when that NIU defense was really good. So yeah, I mean, we're looking at a guy that's been exciting for a few years and should be as potentially the player of the year in the MAC next year. So they're going to go as far as I guess that offense is either able to take them or as much as the defense is able to improve. I don't know. They got to figure some shit out. But so that's really all we got for you. Just a couple things to keep in mind for Western Michigan football this offseason, where their heads are at, where we're thinking about them. And, I won't complain if Western Michigan has another season that's full of as exciting games as they had this past year. It definitely makes
me either. I won't complain.
Definitely makes
I won't complain.
Being a MAC fan fun. And when we share that feeling of being Buster Bronco with cocaine on our nose, like that's what it's like.
You do. Please tell. Do tell.
That's what it's like.
Telling yourself.
That's what it's like watching Western Michigan football. I won't complain. So I'm happy to do more of that sweet snow coke with Buster Bronco.